I'm waiting to get another email from Keller Williams saying cease and desist. But I'm sticking with it. All right. So what I wanted to do today is talk about a little bit about zip forms and e-signatures and how not to give your hard-earned money to DocuSign. And if this works for you, DocuSign is what, $30 a month?
I think it's
15 a month. So I want $7.50 a month. I have a PayPal account. Never mind. So the idea is, and there are a lot of things about. I know that there are a lot of things about DocuSign that are really good. I'm not dissing them, but you can do everything you need to do with DigitalInk, which is built into the California Association of Realtors system, which means you're already paying for it. All right. And what I don't like to see, I noticed that when DocuSign was coming around and signing people up, I felt like we ought to first start by doing a session on how to use the programs you're already paying for before we tell you that maybe you might want to pay for another program, right? That's my theory behind all this. Now, the most important tip, and some of this requires a little bit of research if you want to, without going crazy, the most important tip in using zip forms are the cover sheets. And if you don't do this, it's going to make the digital signing more complicated. And what you might want to do, I could go through and sort of tell you, but there are a lot of things in the transaction cover sheet that do not appear in forms. So the idea isn't necessarily to try and fill out every single line in the cover sheet, but to fill out every line that might appear in a form. For example, the cell phone number of the buyer never appears in a form. Right? There's no form that calls for that. Or the fax number, or the business phone number, or even the home phone number. Their idea when they did this is, and by the way, this hasn't changed in decades, literally, is that you might print out this sheet and staple it to the side of a broker jacket, right, the escrow folder, so you'd have all the contact information. That's kind of old school. But we want to fill out everything that we might be asked about. That means if there's more than one buyer, you want to put in their name and email address. What I'm going to do is, because I'm going to be Michael, and I'm putting in that, and I'm going to put in a different email address. All right. Now, if we don't, I can't spell my name. It's so hard. D-E-V-I-N.
Mine, it was the transaction name.
What?
On mine, it says transaction name.
I'm sorry, what?
On my thing, it says transaction header. Do I do that?
Well, first of all, I've already created a transaction. Let's say we're starting with a new transaction. All right. And I'll delete this later. All right. So we'll start from the beginning. We're starting with a new transaction. All right. And you have to give the transaction a name. This is actually a good place to start. Thanks, Ruby. So what you can do is, obviously it's listing, purchase, and residential. Notice it says apply template. There are no templates here. The reason, I'm going to explain why a template is a good idea in a minute, and you'll see why. So I'm going to call this Mike Devlin Technology Class. We don't have a template. We're going to click on OK. And now we're looking at a blank Zip Forms login. The first thing you want to do is start with a cover sheet. So you highlight it. You can click on Add the Form or just double click. And if we double click, or click on Add the Form. And then we want to fill out enough information to make it work. So I'm going to just do, and by the way, the minimum information we need in order to fill out the form and use electronic signatures is the name and the email address of the buyer. Now, if there's buyer number 2, we would put in their name and email address. These are the minimum things that we need. If you're writing an offer, for example, you may not know all of the seller's contact information, and we're probably not going to be emailing it to them. It's possible. All right. In another, well, I'm not going to talk about dot loop here, but the idea is that we're probably going to use this right now. I'm just going to talk about how you use this with a buyer so that you don't have to drive to their house to get them to sign forms, right? You don't have to drive back to get them to sign an addendum, right? You don't, for those of you that have worked with buyers recently, you know what I'm talking about, right? When they've written 18 offers, they no longer need you to explain to them, and you're driving around showing them forms, driving back to the office, scanning the signed forms, emailing the signed forms. We're eliminating all of that, right? So we're going to put in the buyer's name, one at least. Seller, landlord, we don't need that, but we need some property information. The MLS number is not a have-to number, right? There's only rarely any place in the different forms where the MLS number could even go, right? But again, when they devised the cover sheet, they thought you would be using this as your master control and have all of the information, right? I would print out a copy of an all printout, a full printout, but you need the street address. And let me say 123 Main Street, Campbell, Township. Yeah. I don't think you know, unless you've studied the United States government survey system recently, you probably don't know that, and I've made an error here. Even the place like county isn't really used very much. I can't think of a form that requires that. But so the point I'm trying to make is that you're probably not going to want to fill out every single piece of this, right? You don't need to say this is in lot 4 of block C of tract 8391. Right? You don't need to do all that. The tax ID number comes up in a couple of places, right? I believe that in some of the seller statutory disclosures, it may ask for an APN, not a tax ID number, excuse me, but an APN number, right? The APN number, I believe, comes up in seller statutory disclosures. We're going to skip that. Listing date and listed price, we really don't care about that. We're not going to do the mortgages or liens or encumbrances or home. We're not going to do any of that stuff. But we're going to go down to purchase price. And we're going to write in how much our offer is. $500,000. Tab. The date we put in, we're doing it today. Closing date.
$5 million.
Well, it's a townhouse. Let me see. I'll fix it.
That's a nice
April.
Hey, I want that.
And the default is 30 days, so we're going to do 30 days, and I'll take out some zeros. How about one? Well, prices are going up. We want to, all right, how about that? And the deposit amount, deposit increase amount for, this isn't supposed to be a contracts class, but you take the $500,000 multiplied by 3%, that's $15,000. That would mean $10,000 would be our increased deposit. Offer date, I'm not really too sure why they have both. And expire date, there's an expiration. This is on page 8 of the purchase contract at the top of page 8, where it says that they have so many days, and let's say we're not, the default is 3 days, but they don't need 3 days. And we'll leave the time the way it is. We don't have an acceptance. We don't have the amount finance. We could do that. So let's say, let me tab. So let's say we're,
Expires in 1 day?
I'm giving him 1 day. This isn't a contracts class. I'm not necessarily saying that 1 day is the right day to give them, but the idea is it's going to populate the form. Right? If we want to, the default is 3 days. It's residential. I don't care about all this other stuff. I don't really even care about the escrow information. We could put it in. I'll do this. Old reliable title company. All right, and we keep going. The selling broker firm or seller broker information, listing broker information. This is why we want to create a template. So what I would suggest that you do, if you haven't done this already, is you just go into Zip Forms and you create a transaction and you call it purchase template. And what you want to do on the purchase template is fill out all of the selling broker information. That means the selling broker's firm name, Keller Williams Realty Silicon Valley, our address. You don't really need the office DRE number, but you don't really need that, but you can find it and put it in here. The phone number, your name, you'd be the sales agent's name, your phone number, your fax number if you still use old technology, your DRE number, your email address, and you fill it out. And then when you save this as a template, what that means is that when we went back to where we were creating a transaction and it said apply template, you would just pick the purchase template and all of that stuff would already be there. So you're not having to type your name, your DRE number, your office address, your office name, your phone number every time you write an offer. Right? You don't have to live like that anymore. Right? Make a template, purchase, then you make another template that says listing template. And in the listing template, you fill out all the listing broker information. That's your name, the office name, phone number, all that stuff, and you save it. And now by the way, and we can do more with the template in that once you've created a template, you want to go through the long list of potential forms, and it's a different list for buyers than it is for listings. And when you select all the forms, that way when you save it as a template and you launch the template, not only does it come up with a worksheet with your information already filled in, it has all of the forms that you would need on the buying side. Or if it's a listing, it would have all of the listing forms. Right? Do you understand? My goal, I don't have enough time to go through what all those forms are. I'm not going to do that. But the idea is that, pardon?
It said to have that, is there anywhere we can?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a list of forms. And it wouldn't hurt you to take a look at every form in this list. Right? It wouldn't hurt. Right? But if you ask Jake, there is a list that we have. I have one someplace for a buck. I'll give you a copy. All right. But do you understand? So if it's you need agency disclosure, you need the residential purchase agreement, right? There are certain things you might need a short sale addendum, right? The buyer inspection advisory is part of the purchase agreement on the listing, right? I'm not going to do all that now, right? But you understand, you create a buying and a selling package, fill out all your information on the worksheet, save it, and how would you do that? You go over here to where it goes to save as. We don't have any templates. Save. The transaction is saved. I have to go over here to file. It's been a while. It's clicking. All right. So we go create template. I really don't want to create a template because I'm using Mike's system. But you get the idea. All right. So and we don't need all of this stuff, pest control, disclosure, home warranty. We don't need all that stuff. So first of all, the most useful thing that I could share with you about how to make zip forms work is that you want to create templates, one for buying, one for selling, and you want to fill out this worksheet. All right? You want to fill out this worksheet. Now, how am I doing? It's already 20 minutes. So what we are going to do is we're going to scroll down here, and we're going to go through the list. And what I simply really want to do is to show you how to use the e-signatures. So I'm going to go down to the RPA.
You can go to categorize.
I know. Yeah, I know. You can also search. If you go to category, but you can do numeric and alphabetic, and you could do search, and you could type in RPA, and you can see there it is, the residential purchase agreement. And we double click and there it is. Notice what's happened. It's put in the close of escrow date. Right? Now, I've always been, and I'm not doing a contracts class, but I've sort of liked the idea of picking a date. Right? Because if you say 30 days from acceptance, sometimes that falls on a weekend and now we have to do an addendum, and being a lazy agent, I didn't want to have to do addendums. Right? So I would pick a date. Notice how it didn't put in the assessor's parcel number because I didn't have it. I mean, I didn't make one up. But it would have put in the assessor's parcel number if I filled it out. Notice and then we're going to notice it put down the deposit, the increased deposit, the loan amount, and so this is cut down on the amount of things I have to do. Notice it put in the address and the date on every single page. Does everybody see that? Right? And so then I go through, and then at the top of page 8, where is this offer, and it didn't seem that didn't seem to take. But here's, you'd put your name, all right, and then you could put, I don't know why, that one didn't go through. Isn't that not?
Because it's the buyer or, so you have to choose that.
No, expiration of offer, I put in an expiration of offer, but we'll leave it at 3 business days. I gave it only 1 day, maybe it objected. So now, again, my purpose of doing this was not to teach you how to fill out the contract. That's what Mike did. But we've now created one form, and we've created a, and let me pick another form.
Mike,
Yeah.
is the cover sheet, is that just an alternative to filling out the RPA?
Yeah, what the cover sheet, it's an easier way of looking through it. The other advantage to doing it that way is that it'll auto-populate every form.
Oh, yeah.
Every form. You don't have to do it. You don't have to type it in again and again and again. This, by the way, is the biggest mistake I see people making with zip forms. Is that they they look at the cover sheet and they say, I don't need a cover sheet. I don't need that. And then I watch them typing in the address on every page of every form. Right? And I don't know why. I don't know why. Right? Because if you do the cover sheet right, it auto-populates every form. Right? So, does everybody understand? We are going to use cover sheets. We're going to create templates, which stores all of our basic information because we don't want to waste our time. We want to be lead generating, right? So now we're going to want to do the electronic signatures. And this used to be bad, but it's gotten to where I'm not really too sure what the significant difference is between this and DocuSign. So how would we do electronic signatures? Look at the button that says e-sign. Everybody see that? Up there? E-sign. You click on it, it has only one choice, and that choice is to sign. Now, what I'm going to do, because he doesn't find it funny necessarily when I send it. Well, he knows what I'm doing. I send all sorts of weird. So I'm going to just, your information would be automatically there. All right. Your documents are ready to sign. And notice by default, it doesn't think you want the client to sign the cover sheet because there's no place for them to sign, but it has the RPA checked. You could check more. All right. Now, one of the documents that I just pulled up was the wonderful San Jose street tree disclosure. Right. What you understand is not a CAR form. Right. By the way, this is, I'm not trying to give you, one of the things that I started doing because I was lazy is a lot of those forms, like even the street tree disclosure form, only requires that the words appear, not that you actually use that piece of paper. So what I used to do out of my, I will call it efficiency rather than laziness, I would take all that text and I would put it into an addendum. right? Just paste it into an addendum. And the reason I would paste it into an addendum is that Zip Forms knows where addendums are supposed to be signed and initialed. But it doesn't know where this PDF is supposed to be signed and initialed. Right? You understand? So anything I had that was a PDF that I didn't need the form as it was printed, but just the words, I'd copy the words and make an addendum. By the way, it has a clause manager where you can save all this stuff. Right? You could save this San Jose street tree disclosure and pop it into an addendum. It makes signing a lot easier. And just to show you what I mean by that, we're also going to sign the street tree addendum. Does that sound like fun? We're going to do that too. So we're going to click on Add PDF Document, and I stuck the street tree addendum on the desktop so I could find it. And I think I put it on the desktop. How about here? Doesn't that look like it? And so
I'm sorry, did you send it in, Mike, or you did, where you said,
I clicked on Add PDF Document.
but before that, when you had the e-sign, did you say send now?
No, don't do Send Now.
Okay,
You're ahead. You just click on Sign.
okay.
Don't click on Send Now. We're not there yet. So does everybody see? I just wanted to show you what the system is capable of. We're not only going to send a purchase agreement to the buyer, we're going to send that lousy Xerox of the San Jose street tree disclosure to them. Now, what happens is over here, notice how it's put in my email. Where did it get my email? Does anybody want to guess? From the cover sheet. Now, if I hadn't put the email on the cover sheet, I'd be typing the email in right here. Now, I don't want to do that every time because I'm efficient. And if I'm going to send this buyer things again and again and again and again, I don't want to be typing their email address in every time I want to email them something. I want it to know their email, and it will know their email if I put their email on the cover sheet. If there's two of them, you put both emails on the cover sheet. The only thing that really messes this up sometimes is I've had husbands and wives, they say, we only have one email. I'm like, you're kidding. Right? And it messes the system up because it doesn't want to send to the same email two different things. And I'm like, for God's sake, get your own email, right? You know, I mean, but anyhow, we're not going to go there. So what we want to do is if you click on this box up here that says enable, disable all, it makes them all dark. And if you click on that one, we've now identified the one person we're emailing it to. If you leave them all clicked, the thing will cramp up, right? It'll have cramps because it's going to, you're going to want people that you do not have emails to get a copy of it and whose signature is not required for the form. Do you understand? If you've put your own email in and you leave yourself clicked, but there's no place for the selling agent to sign, then it's not going to work. By the way, on the purchase contract, there is a place for the selling agent to sign, right? Does everybody know that? Paragraph, page 8, little box, right? There is a place for you to sign. But if you're sending them an addendum, a lot of times there isn't any place for you to sign. And if you have your name clicked and there's nothing for you to sign, it's going to stop and say, well, we don't know, what are you doing? All right, what are you doing? All right, so you only want the people that you're sending it to. And it is possible. I've done an entire transaction where the seller signed, the buyer signed, everybody signed using the forms, right? Because the seller was in another country, and it was all done through one system. Is everybody with me so far? Yeah.
How did you get the San Jose street disclosure?
I downloaded it from the Market Center 510 My Transactions form library, which you have access to. If you were to Google search San Jose street tree disclosure, you'll probably find it. I got it from the Gateway intranet. You need it as a PDF. So, but you understand, just so everybody's clear what I'm doing here, anything that we have as a PDF, upload into the system, right? Any forms that we can scan on our scanner that require signatures, we can upload into the system, right? How are we doing on this? Is this all right? Am I going too fast? No. All right. So what we're going to do, notice we could add parties, but we're going to click on Continue to ZipLogic. There's a preview and a Send Now. Don't hit Send Now right now, because the problem is that we haven't done anything with the San Jose Street Tree Disclosure Form. We haven't told people where we want them to initial or sign. So we're going to hit Continue to ZipLogic, and what it's going to do is it's going to take a little bit of time. All right, and it's not done. It's still working. Now we're looking, and we have to wait for it. There we go. Now, notice it's asking, are these all the parties we've got? We could add a party. We could CC somebody. Right, but if we've done all this right, let's say we made a mistake and we added people that we don't want to get copies of the form, we could remove them. Add documents. Let's see what our choices are. Both of the ones we included were there, but if we had forgotten one, we could upload it now, right? Assuming that it's a PDF. If it's part of the CAR, package and zip forms, you need to go back and make sure that you want them all included at one time, right? That you want them to sign. Add signatures. Now, if you're using a zip forms form, it already knows, right? Now it's asking me about, I'm going to close this. Notice it's already put them in, right? So up here, and it's a good thing I did this because this is a little tricky, it's already put in the right spots for what we've done. Did you understand? Let me make sure I'm saying that right. It understands the California Realtor Standard Form, and it knows where people initial and sign. So it's already done that. By the way, if I didn't have the street tree disclosure, I would have skipped this step altogether because I don't need to look at it because it knows. Could we ever have a standard form where we want them to initial something in addition to where they normally would initial? Could we ever have written something in that we thought was so special that we wanted them to initial to the side to make sure they saw it? Right? I'm not saying this comes up often, but you could, if you had typed something in, like it says buyer is to pay $4,000 for a short sale transaction fee, but we're not going to go there. What we want, the only reason that we went to add signatures is because of this lousy street tree disclosure form.
What about the arbitration thing? Because that doesn't necessarily.
It'll initial those.
It will show you.
Yeah.
Because it didn't
Highlights it.
It'll highlight it, but it's like this, it's weird, sometimes the buyer will miss it. I pointed out.
Well, if the thing is, if the buyer, if you use DigitalInk, if they don't initial every place, they can't go on.
But they don't have to initially agree to arbitration.
They don't have to agree to arbitration, but this is a conversation. First of all, best practices. If the first time, when you're getting signatures, is the first time you've ever gone over the form with people and discussed arbitration and liquidated damages, my belief is you've waited too long, right? What I suggest in the Ignite class, I talk about this, is that if you have a person who's interested in buying a house, you ought to print out one of these forms and give it to them and tell them to go home and read it, right? And then you ought to discuss it before you email them this link. And yeah, it's true that they could not agree to arbitration, but I would have already figured that out before I did this, right? And liquidated damages. So I'm not getting into that right now. I'm assuming that they're going to initial everything. But notice the street tree disclosure. we disclose, and by the way, we could have marked this before, but what I simply want to do is see where it says sign here, and there's also an initial, and I agree, we're going to grab onto this, and we're going to drag it down here, and notice it's asking us, first of all that it's done so far is put in a signature, but I could have a signature block which asks for more information. I could include the date field. I could say, is that mandatory or optional? I'm going to say it's mandatory, and I click on apply, and I close this, and you might say, well, that's, I could move it, the initial over there, all right? To move the initial around. All right, now I didn't print their names. By the way, just if you're, this is more than what I expected to do, but there are a whole bunch of websites that you can upload a PDF form and it'll allow you to type in stuff, right? Even if you don't have Adobe Acrobat or any of the form ones, there's a bunch of them where you could go up and go in and click on it. So I would, before I sent it, I would have printed their names and the property address and checked the boxes and filled out the form, right? You understand? I would have done that first, but leaving only the parts for them to sign and date, scanned it, filled out, added the signature and date, and then moved on. All right, does everybody understand what I've done, right? And I should have filled this out, but I was eating lunch before for class. So now we're going to hit send. And the standard one is the title, a description, which I could type in stuff, email and messaging. Your documents are ready to sign. I'm going to click on send now. And do you want to send this? Are you really sure we've read what you've typed and we want you to think about it? And it's now started. And it sent me an email. How hard was that? Right? And you understand, if it wasn't for the street tree, it would have taken me a lot less time. But how hard was that, right? If you fill out the form first, all you need are places for them to sign an initial. It's not that long. So what happens now? All right. So here's my email. Hopefully I don't have any ones with threatening titles. Oh, here it is. Your documents are ready to review. Zip Forms, Mike Devlin Technology class. So I click on it, and it says your documents are ready to sign to access your. By the way, it would be good to have called your client and said, it's coming. And you click on this. So what does the person have to go through in order for this to work? Well, how about start? Okay. Do you read legal consent? Do you agree to legal consent? I have to say yes. You understand? Because if I don't say yes, then we're wasting our time. I click on next. Select your sign-up PIN. Confirm your signing PIN. And on to view, it needs to be 6 characters. I must contain 1 digit and 1 alpha. How about this? All right. And I could pick from a couple. I like the John Hancock. And so action required, initial 8 times, optional initial twice, sign once. All right, click on next. Let me see. So it says I have initial 8 times, option initial twice. That's arbitration and liquidated damages. Again, I would have explained this with somebody first. And if you just click on commit signatures, right? If somebody's going to do them all, they can just click on that button. If they're fussy and they say, let me see. So they go down here, Click here to sign. Okay. I agree to that one. Next signature. And it takes them to the page. Come on. Come on. All right. All right. That, I guess, is okay. Next signature. And come on. I have a really slow connection.
How much does this thing cost?
You've already paid for it.
Oh, really? I thought there was a charge.
No, that's DocuSign.
No, I
The-
did DocuSign.
DigitalInk is included in your membership to the California Association of Realtors.
Is it a certain amount of transactions, or is it?
Not that I know of. My belief is
Yeah.
that if you get to where they're charging you, because you've had so many contracts signed,
We can afford
that
it.
you might at that time not care about it. But I don't believe that this was built into your dues. So, by the way, most people, especially after the first time click on commit all. But notice here's liquidated damages. Okay. Here's arbitration. Okay. Click here. By this time, I figured click here. All right. I'm going to just hit commit signatures. Yes. And it's committed me. It's doing the rest of them. All right.
Mike, did you say if one of the signatures are missing, it won't let you?
If it's one of the required ones, it's not going to let it go through.
Oh, okay.
Right,
They'll-
if it's-
they'll know if there's still something.
Right. It'll stop them and say, hey, you didn't sign one. It's not going to let them send it back without a page initialed and without something signed. It's not going to let them do it.
It will go if the two optionals are.
The two optionals are, right. Right. But that's why you want to talk to them about arbitration and liquidated damages.
Yeah, yeah.
So Mike, on when you add the signatures, do you go to every page on the card, on the 10 pages?
The CAR form, you don't have to do it because CAR knows where people sign an initial on their forms. That was my whole discussion.
You just hit apply then? When
You could do it for all, but what I wanted to do was show, because the question came up, what about arbitration and liquidated damages? I wanted to show you, because sometimes the first time the client's going to click on, they're going to want to look at each one. Right, but if this is the 12th offer they've done, they're not doing that anymore. They just hit sign all and send it back to you. Right, it takes them a minute to do it.
Will it go to the next person?
It does if you create, I didn't bother to do that here, but the answer is yes. I've done the whole thing with using the digital ink, but that requires that you have the seller's email address, which the listing agent would have to give you, right? And by the way, as a listing agent, I would give it to you because I would just as soon, I would rather not drive over to the seller's house. And one of the transactions I used this on, my client was in Shanghai. The house wasn't, but my client was in Shanghai at the time that we sold it. And she didn't have any trouble, right? Because I hear they have computers in Shanghai. And so I gave the agent, the other agent who was writing the offer, my email, her name, and everything. When it came, what it does is it sends it from one. So let's say I'm the selling agent, and I have the seller's email. You can't do more than what we're doing without the seller's email. And I have the seller's email. It would send it to the buyer first. And by the way, I can do the order now because I only picked one. It wasn't asking me about the order, but I can make an order. And so it would send it to the buyer first, and then when the buyer was done, it would send it to the next person in the order, and then when they're done, it would send it to the next person, and then
Okay, so if you had two buyers that were divorced,
Yes.
let's say, but they both had to.
absolutely.
So it would go.
And I assume they don't share an email,
Right.
right? So yeah, and so you would, and then all you have to do is let them fight out who gets it first. Right? They might argue about that. Send it to me first. I want to see it first. No, I want to see it first. But the answer is yes. You can. You say it goes to one first, and then when they're done, it goes to the other one, and then it comes
So
back
they
to you.
actually see it, because like on DocuSign, I don't think that the other party sees what the other person sees.
I don't know if they see it or not on this one.
So like, you got, so if you have a husband or wife that are both at work, right? So then you send it to the husband first. Where's that on
You can, in the thing that we were doing, it would allow us to, maybe I missed the question, you can set the sequence.
Send it to the husband first for him to do the e-signature, right?
Right.
Then you gotta get it to the wife.
It does it automatically. It's if you put down the husband's signature and then the wife's signature, buyer 1, buyer 2. And it would send it to buyer 1 first, then it sends it to buyer 2 second, and then it'll come back to you. And it could go to 3 or 4 buyers if you had additional signatures.
But do you know where it is at any given time?
Yes, you can. Because let's say we go to zip forms, right, where we were. Let me go back here. Remember zip forms? We go back here to e-sign. Notice it says check status. And so when we click on this, right now I haven't submitted it, so it only says that. It doesn't show a lot. But if I click on view, what it's going to do, and it may not like it that I'm opening up more than one thing, but this is it. It's showing me where it went. But so it's already says that it's been authenticated. That means that the buyer has registered and said yes and given a PIN number, but it's not finished. There's an action required. So it means that I haven't signed everything. So where I am here is I shouldn't have jumped out of the street tree. So I go down here to the bottom with the street tree. It's not happy that I opened it up twice. It's not happy. Let me. The problem was I had it open 2 different ways in one. Here we go. That's what I wanted. So this is the signature for the street tree, and the signed date is already there. I commit the signatures. I've signed the street tree disclosure, and I click next. Let's see, did I miss one?
Yeah, you have to go back because doing commit signatures doesn't work. You have to sign or initial every box.
I missed, no, because I was doing it manually, I missed one. Let me find the one I missed. I see my initials there. I see initials there, there. Oh, I know what I missed. I didn't do the inspection advisory. If you do it one at a time, you have to keep doing it one at a time. And now I've done it all. I was zipping through the zip forms.
So then when it's when the husband and wife have one email address,
It's a problem.
it can work because it'll go and then it'll have to go again or
Yeah,
pop
I've
up
done
again in
that.
your inbox.
I've done that.
Yeah,
Because they each have a different PIN number,
right.
so it's only gonna let this buyer 2, if it goes back to buyer 1, and they put their own PIN, they just put it as their own PIN, and then you can send it, the second buyer the same email address,
All right.
and they create their PIN,
Okay.
and then it will give them.
And by the way, just say, this is, I'm still logged in as the client. If I click on review documents, it allows you, see over here it says print and download. So if they want to, they could download a copy of this to their computer now that they're done. All right? So, did everybody get that? They can print, download, review the copy, so they get a copy of it. So we're going to quit out of here. Do we want to quit? Yes. And then what I'm going to do, it says that you're done. If I go back to zip forms now, and I go here to e-sign, and I go to check status, it hasn't updated yet. It's normally not, it's abnormal to do this all as quickly as I did it. But it's going to send me an email that says your clients have signed the documents. and it's taking its time, of course. So,
Mike,
yeah.
the authentication of the client, it only survives for this one transaction? I mean, what if they do another transaction a year later, they're an investor, they use a different agent?
I don't know about that part. I know that within the system, within them and my transaction, it still works. They may have to create a different PIN on a, I haven't had that come up. I'm not sure. But I just want you to see what's come through my email. Thank you for submitting your e-signature. Document set is complete. And hello, attached are the fully executed documents. And I can download them and save them, and it's a zip file. And I don't need that. I don't know why that's open. So I know that DocuSign's a little more elegant, right? But I don't see, when I work with new people, which I do a lot, I show them how to use this. I emphasize filling out the worksheet, right? And they start sending files back and forth, and it seems to work. Right? Was that?
I wish that we had this class last week.
What?
We had this class last week.
Well, they didn't, you know, I was,
I don't know how many people know about this, because no one's ever talked about it.
I know.
It's always scanning email.
What did you do last week? Did you buy DocuSign or something?
No, I was scanning and sending for probably the entire day. Like I was going down to Kinko and doing a bunch of things just to get
Well,
back to it.
Jeff decided to unleash me on Tech Mondays and asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, this one has been on my mind because I noticed at the other office, they were promoting, hey, everybody sign up for DocuSign. And I was like, why? Because as far as I know, we haven't done a class on how to use this one. And I do realize that DocuSign is elegant, but I don't see what was so difficult about this one. Right, and I've had agents who said, well, my grandmother wants to make an offer and she barely can use the computer, and she came back to me and said, I called her to see if she had any questions, and before she was going to call her, she got a thing that said her grandmother had signed it. Right, she figured it out, right? I mean, it wasn't, how difficult was that, right? It's not very hard, and they've improved DigitalInk a lot. And so you need to, all of this, getting efficient with this sort of technology is just think of all the time you could have spent lead generating. Yeah? All right. All right? Was that fun?
Yeah.
Tell your friends where you heard about it.
Thanks, Mike.
All right.
What's the next free thing you're going to teach us?
I don't know.